In the previous chapter, Father J was able to take up his passion for painting once again because he had time on his hands, time he had not anticipated having. Nonetheless, he learned that his talent as a painter exceeded his expectations. On that note, I will share more about his paintings after we complete this first book. And now let's see what's in store for Father J in the next chapter of Book 1. Chapter 41, From Commissioner to Cardiologist. While still in Monroe, some 40 miles from Detroit, I received a phone call from Governor Jim Blancher's office. I was being offered a position on the Judicial Tenure Commission for the state of Michigan. Talk about an honor. I was overwhelmed. Imagine a Catholic priest being a member of a commission that sits in judgment of judges with respect to their behavior and conduct while serving on the bench. My principal comment to that appointment before accepting was that I did not know the laws of the state. In fact, I knew very little about the whole court system, the judicial department, and the complicated world of legal matters. I would hardly add any expertise to a commission of judges and lawyers. How could my opinion be of any use in the world of law? It was precisely because of my unfamiliarity with the law that I was selected. Also, my knowledge of moral law would be very helpful. The Judicial Tenure Commission did not handle lawsuits, civil suits, or criminal offense. What came under our jurisdiction was the conduct of a judge, the abuse of power on the bench, the crude treatment of a litigant, partiality, favoritism, bigotry, a possible drinking problem, an unreasonable backup in the resolution of cases, or using language unbecoming of a judge, to name a few. We did not have the authority to reprimand, remove from the bench, demand a rehabilitation program, etc. We sent recommendations to the Supreme Court of Michigan, which made such decisions. Because of that important point, Cardinal Zoka not only permitted me to sit on the commission, but was in favor of it. Priests, having a strong background in philosophy, theology, and morality, could throw much light on a situation regarding behavior and proper conduct. However, if I were involved in the actual decision, instead of recommending an opinion to the Supreme Court, I would have been denied permission as a priest to serve in that role. The reason was clear. I was not the official theologian of the Archdiocese of Detroit, or the Vatican for that matter. I could not therefore speak on behalf of the Church in decisions concerning birth control, abortion, euthanasia, capital punishment, and other delicate moral issues. I filled the vacancy left by Rabbi Groner, who was promoted by his authorities to a higher position, demanding more out-of-state work. I had to take an oath of office as a civil servant and complete the last year of his 3-year term. Compared to the other commissioners, I was considered a layman on the Judicial Tenure Commission. I hadn't thought of myself as a layman for many years. Going back to 1955, when I became a clergyman, Dr. Marjorie Peoples Myers, M.D., was also on the commission and referred to as a layperson. We were both directly appointed by the governor. There were 2 attorneys elected by their colleagues throughout the state of Michigan: John Abbott, Dean Emeritus of the Detroit College of Law, and F. Philip Callista, Esquire. They were really sharp and kept us all alert with their outstanding knowledge of the law. The other 5 were judges, elected also by their respective peer groups. The Honorable Thomas J. Foley and the Honorable Hilda R. Gage, both representing the Circuit Court. The Honorable Harold Hood of the Court of Appeals, the Honorable Barry M. Grant, probate judge, and the Honorable James R. McCann, a district court judge. These were some of the finest people I had ever met in my life. They were, of course, well versed in the law and also the fine points of the law. If we were only discussing the law in each case, Dr. Peoples Myers and I would have no chance by a long shot to add anything to the conversation. However, since doctors and clergy are well informed as anyone concerning ethics, proper behavior, and conduct, we had some equally practical comments to offer. There were about 500 to 600 complaints against Michigan judges each year. That sounds like a lot, but when you consider the thousands of cases brought before the bench each year, the percentage is low. And it is even much lower when you realize that the Judicial Tenure Commission dismissed about 90% as having no substance. I do not wish to discuss in detail any specifics since our work was confidential except what is written in the public record. As expected, poor losers, angry losers, often complained that the hearing was unfair, that the judge was prejudiced, wasn't listening to their side, was paid off, has a personal interest, or likes a pretty face, etc., with no evidence whatsoever coming from any other person present who also witnessed the whole thing. Even their own attorneys would disagree with them, admitting there was no basis for misconduct. On the other hand, about 10% or less of the cases did catch our attention. We would look at the complaint from every angle. We always did our homework before dismissing a case, giving the complainant, whose rights may have been violated, the benefit of the doubt, which also means that judges have rights too. We gave the judges in question as fair an evaluation as possible so that we could make an honest and proper recommendation. Since litigants and judges both have rights, we sometimes got into a hot discussion over whose rights were violated in a particular case. Every so often, unfortunately, we had to recommend that a particular judge who had been reprimanded previously on several occasions for the same legitimate complaints step down. If he or she cooperated with the commission and received approval by proper authorities that the basis of the misconduct was completely corrected, we would recommend reinstating the judge on the bench. If correction was not assured, then the Supreme Court would remove the judge permanently. I learned a lot about the proceedings that take place in a courtroom. It was an education, but I also helped by making a contribution toward the achievement of justice and a fairer outcome for all concerned. I therefore decided to remain on the Judicial Tenure Commission for another 3 years when I got the call to stay on. After about a year, I was nominated by the other members as secretary of the commission. After serving on the commission for about 4 years, I was again approached by the governor's office to renew my position for another 3 years. That was a difficult decision to make. I started having some of the same health problems once again. I was getting sick regularly, feeling exhausted most of the time, and still driving back and forth from Monroe to Detroit more and more frequently for meetings. On top of that, I had to read through 10 or more cases a week on legal-size paper in order to submit my pre-vote concerning the latest complaints against the judges. Some cases were more than 20 pages. At the same time, I was carrying on with a daily crowded schedule of activities in the administration of both the parish, community, and the school. Being the only priest in charge of over 1,000 families and responsible for a school with grades K through 8, I, like many other priests, was beginning to experience the first stages of burnout. It was very uncomfortable to ask not to renew my appointment on the Judicial Tenure Commission. I was never a quitter, and I tended to be a workaholic, but my health was becoming less capable of keeping up with the workload. My personal evaluation of the health condition was soon verified. I was accustomed to giving blood every 6 months. The Red Cross usually chose a different location each time, and on this particular occasion, St. Michael's School was the place. That was certainly convenient. All I had to do was walk from the rectory to the school. I knew many people in line waiting to give blood. They were proud to see their pastor get in line too. However, the master plan had changed. The nurse gave me the required examination of my blood pressure and pulse, then made a shocking statement. "Father, we can't take your blood today." I quickly countered with, "Why not? I've been giving blood for years without a problem." "Your blood pressure, your heartbeat, and your pulse are all irregular." "I demand a second opinion," I said defiantly. "Fine," she said. "Go see the other nurse." I did. She said the same thing, adding, "Father, you had better go see a doctor right away." I called Dr. Sonko, a parishioner of St. Michael's. I asked if he could give me an EKG as soon as possible. "Come on over," he replied. He set me up immediately and took the EKG. "The nurses were right," he concluded. "Your heart is fibrillating badly. I strongly recommend that you see a cardiologist. I can arrange for you to see one in Toledo." It was strange that I felt nothing, no discomfort in the heart area, and not aware of any fibrillation. From my point of view, my heartbeat felt normal. So I had to ask, just how serious was it? What if I refused to see a cardiologist? Was this a serious matter?
It depends on what you consider serious. You could easily have a blood clot while it's fibrillating, or you could... Okay, you made your point. I thanked him for suggesting a particular cardiologist in Toledo, but that I preferred to go to Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit. I knew a lot of doctors who volunteered their services at the Cabrini Medical Clinic at Holy Trinity while I was pastor. I would chat with them every week. I called one of the doctors I knew well and asked if he could put me in contact with one of the top men in the cardiology department. Dr. Michael Letch was the chosen one. He was very kind and encouraging. My blood pressure was exceptionally high, which he believed caused the arterial fibrillation of the heart. The pressure placed on a pastor was multiplied enormously with the shortage of priests in our time. Almost all priests are in agreement about the pressures and stressful situations they experience compared to the past. When Dr. Letch considered my age, my extremely high blood pressure, the 25 years I spent in the inner city of Detroit, and twice having trouble with the heart valve, he recommended the possibility of retirement. I was stunned. Me? Retire? No way. The normal age to begin retirement in the priesthood in this archdiocese is 70. I was only 63 at the time. He asked me to think about it. Then he revealed that he was the personal physician of Cardinal Bernardin in Chicago before he came to Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit. He had a lot of experience taking care of priests with heart problems. Along with many other people, professionals and otherwise, he thought priests worked too hard. Judging by the fact that, as of this writing, 10 classmates have already gone to their reward, and a surprising number of priest friends also died well before the age of 70, I thought very seriously about my future. With my poor health, will I ever see 70 years of age? The cardiologist thought my condition was hereditary since I did not appear to be hyper or overly nervous. In fact, when I followed Father Kern, a legend in his own time, at Holy Trinity, everyone was eyeing me closely to see how I would hold up under such challenge. The famous Episcopal Bishop McGee, when asked about such a difficult appointment, said, "Father J is grace under pressure." I took that as a great compliment, coming from such a notable person. It was true. I rarely panicked unless the situation was totally unbearable with no alternatives. When I shared the information with my brother and sisters about taking the medication the cardiologist prescribed, their response literally shocked me. My older sister Lillian said, "I've been taking medication like that for years." My sister Billy added, "I'm taking the same thing." Tony said pretty much the same. Then I remembered that both of my parents died with heart conditions. My sister Jenny died right on the operating table while they were performing open-heart surgery. My sister Marie expired in the middle of a sentence. An aneurysm took her that quickly. Cancer was not in our bloodline. Heart conditions seemed to be dominant. Not that it mattered a lot. Both were equally as tickets to eternity. A retreat was almost necessary. I had to get away and think about the whole situation. I had come to another turning point in my life. I had done nothing deliberately to create the conditions in which I found myself. Prayer and reflection would bring me to the truth of what was happening to me. Back to Columbare, northeast of Detroit. Walking outdoors in those fields, alone under an open sky, was for me the perfect place to meet God. And I am not drawing comparisons with other places to pray, such as in church or even at home in my private sacred place. In that instance, I needed space. I prayed for several days, asking for the kind of guidance that pertained to my destiny. I returned with a decision. During my next appointment with the cardiologist, I related to him that I concluded at the end of my retreat I wish to wait 2 more years. At that time, I will be ready. I am definitely not ready right now. I have too many things in the fire, too many loose ends. He said it was important to retire when you are ready, otherwise it was, replying to an Italian phrase, il bacio di morte. I happen to be familiar enough with Italian to know that it meant the kiss of death, which referred to the contract of death sealed with a kiss, just as Judas did centuries ago. The doctor went on to explain how many workers who retire before their time, either by being bought off, bumped by another, or talked into it, died rather soon after retirement. That is, if they didn't have any hobbies or a life outside of work. I assured him that I had a lot of hobbies to keep me busy. I went through the whole process of preparing for retirement, writing a series of letters back and forth with the Archdiocese about the possibility of retiring. I needed permission and approval, and meeting with my superior, Cardinal Maeda, in person with 2 letters in my hand from the cardiologist. He was very gracious and understanding. Then I had to inform the parish family of St. Michael's in Monroe, where I had served for 7 years and had come to love as my own family. After that came the slow and quite painful meeting with groups and individuals I had worked closely with about my leaving in the near future. First and foremost was my secretary, Rita Marino, who was all that any pastor could ask for regarding efficiency, competence, cooperation, and an abundance of patience. There was the rest of the staff, the parish council, the commissioners, the committees, and so many individual parishioners who were deeply involved in parish activities, both as co-workers and friends, with a firm resolve to accomplish our parish goals and dedicated to preserve the parish community. It was a bit heartrending to say goodbye to my friends and to retire from the principal work which was the focus of my life for the last 40 years. There was help from everywhere. I needed it. My last Mass at St. Michael's as pastor saw a very crowded church with parishioners and with friends from the past, many of whom I had not seen for years. Naturally, there were mixed feelings of great joy and sorrow. Priests are human beings who come from human families. They have the same emotions and feelings as anyone. They hurt when they must leave a congregation which they had endeared to themselves in ministry. I was assigned to 9 different parishes in my active ministry of the priesthood, and I am one who dislikes goodbyes. Believe me, it never gets easier. The older we get, the more we appreciate family ties and friendships. With age comes a natural change in values, and the values more often than not include others. We become more interested in the person rather than appearances. My heart, even still this day, 2 years after I retired, is filled with love and gratitude for all those wonderful people with whom I had the privilege to cross paths. Since I did not believe in accidents, I am sure that many thousands whom I addressed from the pulpit throughout the years were meant to hear me speak about spiritual laws, spiritual values, and our spiritual destiny. I hope I have given them the right message. I spoke only from my convictions, right or wrong. It's dangerous in a way. We become responsible for persons, animals, or anything for that matter, which we had touched, loved, or influenced. The thought occurred to me. Those are the very words the fox said to the prince in Exupery's classic story of the Little Prince. The fox said, "You are responsible for that which you have loved." He was referring to the rose which the little prince was watering and protecting from the element. Except for divine providence, once again, I would not have lived to retire at all. About 6 months before I officially retired, I drove to St. Vincent's Hospital down in Toledo, Ohio, to visit a parishioner. After conferring the last rites, I was on my way back to Monroe. I took a road called 125 and was just south of Alexis Road. When I arrived at the crossing, there was a few cars lined up waiting for a train to go by. I followed suit and drove up behind the last car. I was not even there for 10 or 15 seconds before suddenly I distinctly heard a loud voice yell, "Get out of that lane immediately!" I swerved over to the lane next to the sidewalk, which I did not see previously. As soon as I made it to the other lane, I heard the most horrible noise. I thought it was an explosion. A van smashed directly into the last car where I was parked just moments ago, hitting it with the full force of its velocity and weight. The van was obviously speeding and turned the small, mid-sized car into an accordion. I was frozen for a moment. That was exactly where I was. I could have been killed instantly or permanently injured, paralyzed, or what have you. Many thoughts raced through my mind. When I recovered and focused on the situation, I called the police with my car phone. As I was getting out of my car, I heard someone yelling that the driver of the van got out and was running away across an empty field. 2 other men started chasing him. I ran too, but by the time I caught up with them, they had grabbed him by the arms and were bringing him back to the scene of the accident. Just then the police arrived and took over. There must have been a police car in the vicinity. They were there so fast. I told one of the officers that I would serve as a witness if necessary. I still did not have a chance to see just how much damage and injury took place. I started to look inside the squashed car that was hit with the full impact when the police told me to move my car immediately. I was blocking a long line of traffic and the train was gone. As I was walking to my car, I could easily see that all 4 cars in the other lane were damaged. The one in front was pushed forward to within inches of the oncoming train. They must have been frightened to death. I still do not know if the two people in the last car died or miraculously survived. On my way home, I had thoughts racing through my mind how I was incredibly spared a very possible instant death or serious disabling injury. Someone was watching over me and got my attention. I had just come from giving the last rites to someone else. I almost needed the last rites myself, except for a heavenly warning. If someone was in charge of keeping me alive to fulfill my destiny, I certainly have kept that guardian very busy. Death was knocking at my door several times that I know of, but it wasn't quite time. I continue to thank God every morning upon awakening. The message is that I still have some work to do. The future will always be mysterious. I have the strangest feeling that this book is one of the reasons I have been spared so many times. I am not even sure what that means. I don't know why my story would be better than anyone else's. There are billions of people on Earth today approaching the 21st century, and they are all exciting. Perhaps there are people who wonder what goes on in the mind of a Roman Catholic priest. He lives in this world, but he is spiritually motivated and driven by his conviction that the world of spirit is a very real world. So much so that his priestly life of sacrifice and service would have no meaning and would even appear insane if indeed there were no afterlife awaiting us.
Thank you for listening, and please join us every Sunday at 3 o'clock for our watch party as I premiere the next chapters of Father Jay's book.